And then so many amazing people on here. Feels good. Let's see. Elder Jerry, I think I seen you on here. Oh, there you are.
Michael, we had a question in the chat about, is this being recorded? I see that it's live on YouTube. Will it just be hosted there?
I think that's what'll happen. So
I'll record it as well, and then that way we can send that out.
There's Jerry. All right, do we have Nikhil? Is Nikhil with us? I see Azania.
I see Nikhil in, but
Okay. Nikhil? Are you ready? Should we get started, Jeremy?
We can get started. Good afternoon, everyone. First, want to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. I am Jeremy Clark, co-chair of the Indigenous Men and Men of Color Workgroup. And today, I would just like to welcome you to our event and hope that this offers a place to process the recent events, share your experiences, and speak your truths. We've come here today to uplift Black and Indigenous people of color's voices, reflect on the past week's events with the attack on the Capitol in Washington, D.C., the not guilty verdict in the Jacob Blake shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the police killing of a Somali American in Minneapolis. I'm going to borrow some words from one of our presidents at Winona State University, Scott R. Olson. Please know that the well-being and safety of each member of our community is our utmost priority. We are united in our mission as a community of learners to improving our world. And as this last year has proven, together we can face big challenges, and together we will endure. Something that resonated with me, especially with the events that unfolded at the Capitol, was if these rioters were people of color, would they be treated the same? We saw images of Capitol Police helping rioters down the stairs. We saw explicit images of white supremacy in our nation's capital. If that were us, how would we be treated? I'm gonna leave you with some words from Langston Hughes in Let America Be America Again. Let it dream. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be the great strong of land and love where never kings can be nor tyrants scheme. That any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Thank you all.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nikhil. I'm the other co-chair for Indigenous Men and Men of Color. As Jeremy laid out, this webinar is about a conversation that needed to happen in what world we're living in. As an immigrant, I've often been told in America, it doesn't matter where you're from, what race you are, or what religion you're from. Everybody is treated equally. That's what I've been indoctrinated into as an immigrant. But lately, maybe since a long time, I would say, since high school has ended and entered college and workforce, I think there are two Americas. Depending upon what your skin color is, you get treated. As my co-chair said, Jeremy, what if it was a group of brown people like me storming the Capitol? What would the outcome be? What if they were my Muslim brothers and sisters storming the Capitol? What would that be? I don't know the answer, but I know it would have not ended the same way that has ended right now. So in that space, I'm wondering, asking questions, and hoping we come to the point that we do live in two Americas and be more race conscious and address the white supremacy around our campus, in our culture, in our society, and in our household, most importantly. On that note, I'm going to end. Thank you, everybody.
Elder Jerry, we're turning to you. Can you unmute?
Okay, my name is Jerry Hirth, and I'm an elder. Michael asked me to open this with a thought or a prayer, and I was thinking about what to say. What prayer for these days that are particularly dangerous? I found a quote from Frank Fool Crow, an Ogallala Lakota, a civic and religious leader who died at Pine Ridge in 1986. He said, "The survival of the world depends on our sharing what we have and working together. If we don't, the whole world will die." I pray that we here work together, organizing and acting, but not from fear and rage, not to hold on to power and privilege at any price, but rather to work with hope, determination, and compassion for all of our relatives, so that we embody the dynamic power of love. Miigwech.
Hi, my name is Azania Tripp. I also work in higher ed and I make collage jewelry. Last Wednesday on January 6th, there was three things that I was thinking about during my workday. My childhood friend had just turned 30. I was organizing and still am organizing our Martin Luther King Jr. event planning, and then also thinking about the murder of Dula Eid that was murdered on December 31st in South Minneapolis, which is at least 3 blocks away from where I currently live. So with these things like running through my mind in the beginning of my Wednesday and seeing everything that was popping up on my phone of what was spoken about previously of the white supremacy, hearing 45 Trump in unity with them, and from seeing all these images, trying to think about like, what does my community look like and how we're being attacked and how do we survive during these historical events. So I think navigating it, I think my first reaction was reaching out to friends that I knew that lived in DC and seeing how they were doing, and then also checking in of how we can be present. So I think that's one of the most difficulties of how all these historical events are happening. We're still trying to function. We're still trying to take care of our families. We're still trying to like do our jobs and finishing the requirements that are asked of us and knowing that we're not okay. So I think today, my hope is that we can continuously talk about how we can address these points and how it needs to go like beyond our work environment. And I think also being cognizant of how the historical trauma will be like affecting the children and like our students as well. So I think I've been doing a lot of research on epigenetics about historical traumas affect your genetic makeup and your DNA. So just trying to navigate that and how do we prepare. So one thing that I just want to end with is a quote from Octavia Butler. She says, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you."
Thank you, Zania. So I'm Michael Bouchard. I work at Dakota County Technical College and Inver Hills Community College. And I have a simple rule, and that's just to go over our list of agreements. So as we start out today, I just want to remind us of some important things as we have a discussion together. So we want to just make sure that if somebody wants to be heard, that we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to be heard. So let's try to practice good listening. Let's build connections to others before and after the meeting. And then this includes opportunities for stakeholder input. All voices are honored, and that we practice compassionate accountability and withhold judgment. We have integrity, so we practice honesty, and we put aside personal gain and prioritize attending meetings and being present in this meeting where we are. That we want to empower people, and so we practice speaking up courageously, and then we can reach out to others if we need some additional input. And then embrace tension. So as we have a conversation such as this one, we know that there will be the possibility of tension. So practice addressing the issue when there isn't like clear agreement. And so also, just because this is an open Zoom meeting, we're going to reserve the right to remove people. And we may even have to end the meeting abruptly. So we if there is any type of Zoom bombing of any of those type of things. So just wanted to say those things. And of course, we want everyone to have a voice in this conversation, but we're trying to center this on BIPOC voices as well and their allies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderators. which is Dr. Jonathan Locus and my other colleague up at Moorhead, Jared Pigeon. So Jonathan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for that, and all the speakers who went, and we appreciate everybody just being here. To open it up, I want to ask, in light of recent events, the Capitol, the governor's mansion, the officers that shot Brother Blake not being charged, and the recent killing of our Somali brother in Minneapolis, just how is everybody doing? How's it going?
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Well, I say this, unfortunately, but many of you will understand when I say this, same stuff, different day.
I see some heads nodded.
Hey, Michael, I was thinking to myself, as I was watching it, it felt unbelievable. Why did it feel unbelievable? I was not being able to connect what I know of how police treat rioters to what I was watching. So to me, it felt cognitive dissonance isn't really how I would describe it. It was confusion, utter confusion. And it really took me days, 3 or 4 days to really cycle through what I was seeing, go through those points of acknowledgement. No, what you saw is what you saw. And what you saw is based on what you know, how white bodies are treated in contrast to how brown and black bodies are treated in doing the same thing. So I feel like the haze is lifting at this point. Like I've had several days to synthesize what I saw.
Hi, I'm Twee. I'm okay. I'm just okay. I think a lot of things were hard for me. The main one is I don't want to have to be teaching my kids about violence, like that much violence at such a young age. But I also don't want them to miss the moment that they're in. So that was just really hard to talk to my children about that. And for me, the part that really got me was there was a curfew instilled in DC for 6 o'clock. And I was waiting because I remember with Black Lives Matter here in Minneapolis, everyone was waiting for 6 o'clock for the war to happen, right? For like the police to rush in, for civilians to be killed for that. So I was anticipating a war happening and nothing happened. People were still hanging around. People were still there. When they put the curfew here in Minneapolis that first night, nobody was warned. So if you were out there by 6, you were just out of luck. You were getting arrested, you were getting maced, whatever. They had a whole blowhorn announcing it to everybody. There's a curfew, you guys make sure you go home. The treatment and all was just unfair. I was at the protest where the curfew was instilled. If I didn't leave before 6 o'clock, when that truck also came in and ran over everybody on 35th or almost ran over everybody, I and my family would have been in that 6 o'clock group of people who were arrested and maced and all that. So just, again, it's just traumatic. It's triggering. It's very unfair. And it's just like really sad. So it's been heavy, and you want to not be heavy for your kids because you don't want your kids to be like, what's going on? Why is mom and dad like that? So you try your best, but it's not easy.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? How are you all doing? Don't hesitate to share.
I'm Harold Torrance. I'm a new American that became a citizen this year, but I'm originally from Venezuela. I've been here for 22 years, and I've seen coup attempts before in my country. And we should not normalize this act. We need to protect our democracy, and we need to redefine who America really is. We are a nation of nations, and we should never, never allow this to happen ever again. So my heart goes out to everybody who has been suffering the consequences of this acts. But at the same time, it is good to see the truth, because without truth, there is no reconciliation.
A thought that, a few thoughts that have been going through my head over the past week is embarrassment. I'm find myself embarrassed to be an American, to look at our nation and to see the events unfolding. And hypocrisy has been something that has been floating in my head over and over and over again. We've seen over the course of the past 6 to 8 months, the world stand up and kind of fight for injustices, fight for life of unarmed Black and brown people that are being killed. And then we see comparisons to a political candidate, your particular political candidate not being put in office, and the result and the reaction of law enforcement and Capitol Police around the two events. Hypocrisy, that's the only thing that I can think. We have people standing and putting their lives literally in danger to speak up for those that don't have voices anymore, that those that are no longer here to advocate for themselves. And then we have comparisons being drawn between that and your chosen or your leader who didn't win. It just, I can't put words to it. I've just been having a difficult time trying to process or create any equivalency when it comes to that.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to? Okay, I was gonna say we can move on to the next question there, Brother Jerry.
Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for joining us here. The next question, let's center it around the needs of our students and our employees and our colleagues, right? When we think about the work with equity and inclusion on our respective campuses, given our system initiative of Equity 2030, how are we going to go about it, creating brave spaces for students and employees to speak their truth, to be heard, and to feel included within our campuses?
Sometimes I wonder if people are hesitant to speak up because they know that this one is being recorded as well, right? And so they're going to be public or they're going to be outed because of their comments. And I can tell you, as a person who's been fairly active in the system and in the community, that, that's a decision that I've had to make with my family, that one day I may lose my job because I'm standing for my principles. And but that's an agreement that my family has come to, that they understand that that's part of the work, that you lose your job for doing your job, right? That's part of your work. But fortunately, I feel pretty supported in my current role from my community, the two colleges that I work at. So I feel really good about expressing my opinions and trying to create those spaces. But again, it's a challenge because I think our system has been so entrenched in its traditions, and its traditions have been mainly to serve, white suburban communities and white rural communities. And here we come along as, you know, BIPOC communities saying, hey, we want some respect. We want a piece of this pie. And I think it's just been a challenge for our communities. And so, but together, you know, forums like this and other opportunities for people to have room to not only just share their perspectives, but also to be heard and to see those changes impacted or take place is really important as well. So I'll pause there.
This is Mary Salmon, Lakes College, and I think about your question, and I think also about all of what's happening in the world compounded by COVID and the isolated environment that we're living in, where I know I can speak on behalf of my community, the Indigenous community. We are used to gathering, we are used to feasting, we are used to being and touching and holding and being with one another. And so given you know, the isolation that we're finding ourselves in too, both employees and students, you know, how do we gather? How do we create those brave spaces in this Zoom environment, so it isn't creating more trauma, right, and fear and isolation?
I'll jump in. I'm Lisa Frecking, Director of Marketing and Communications for DCTC in Inver. And so first of all, I just want to say thank you to those who are leading this charge and continue to lead this charge, and for allowing people like me to speak up as well. I have to admit, I had a tear in my eye at the beginning of this. And my daughter walked in and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm listening to this diversity webinar and it hurts. It just hurts." So thank you for allowing and giving the rest of us a platform and to be brave and try to help. So to answer Jeremy's question, and it's somewhat what I think Twee was talking about too, what is our leadership doing in specific? What do we have control of within Minnesota State? And how can we as leaders encourage our leaders to continue to have a voice? Because clearly I feel the leadership of our nation is not what I would expect. And I add with what Jeremy and others said as well. I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, but I also want to help.
I would like to answer the direct question, how to start the conversation on campuses. At North Hennepin, what we started doing is we intentionally creating space for BIPOC voices to come together. That may look like an affinity group. That may look like a Zoom meeting or racial healing circle. If there are any people in power, like directors, VPs, deans, people in power, like you need to start the conversation. You need to have setting the tone that, okay, we need to have a conversation about this. I think that creates more of a positive change in my experience, because people at coordinator level, entry level, we know what's happening. We have seen it, we have done it. I think when it comes from top down, it kind of opens the gate to have a conversation. And I think our North Hennepin Community College, we started an affinity group maybe 3-4 years ago, and it's still growing. Due to that, we also created another space for queer people on campus. It's a small group, but we still bring voices together. I think bringing voices together is very important right now, because being silent is no more an option. So if people in power, this is a question for you to start having the conversation. I think you can lead the charge. That'll be very helpful.
My name is Hera Charlier from Central Lakes College. And And I agree with Lise. Thanks so much for having this and letting us all participate. You know, I get to work with Mary, Sam, and when we think about how we start these conversations on our campus, I think that what's really important for me is to talk to our leadership and let them know that we're going to have to agree that this is hard and be ready to be really uncomfortable. Mary has helped me see that many of us leading these conversations are, I feel, very ill-equipped. I'll be honest with you, very, very ill-equipped. And we have our own deep work to do to realize that we come to these conversations from a place of privilege, and we have to learn to do this much, much better. To Michael's point, we often talk about what big issues we're willing to, what swords we're willing to die on. I believe this is some of the most important work that we'll ever do in Minnesota State. So I'm really glad that the system has embraced it, but I think we need, as leaders, to continue to dig deep into ourselves as well so that we effectively can lead those conversations and help to create safe spaces that are really safe, not spaces that we just think are safe, so that the conversations are real. So just excited to learn and grow and screw up a lot, which is something that I do all the time. Right, Mary? So thanks for having the conversation. This is part of that process.
I'll just briefly add some of the work that we've been doing to have these conversations, which we have 2 cohorts right now that we meet bi-weekly, and it's groups of people. It's a cohort style model, and every 2 weeks we talk about a specific, we have content that we'll get, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an article, whether it's a video, and we talk about systemic racism, discrimination, and oppression, and how it relates to our lives, how it relates to the institutions. And what I have found is, and this is the first year we've done this, but since we're meeting on a bi-weekly basis, there starts to have some group accountability, and people hold each other accountable to make sure that, because there's questions along when we send the content out. And not only the group starting to hold each other accountable, but as those relationships are being formed and those bonds are being formed, people are beginning to really open up and share personal experiences and really go down levels, really, really deep levels about their identities and so forth. So I just add that, as I know as we're looking at talking about ways in which to have the conversations. I know a lot of times a one-off program doesn't help, because you get some good information, then you go back to a system that's racist. But how do we have consistent and continuous conversations about things that we need to do in order to make the environment more equitable for all different people, the underrepresented groups, people of color, BIPOC folks, LGBTQ folks, to talk about what equity means for those specific populations, and then what are plans in order to implement equity from those people's perspectives.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
I'll take got the next question. So again, we talked about our current events, but we want to make sure that as we're here, we can leave with some action steps. So what are some action steps that we can each take on our campuses to ensure that our campuses are more welcoming, inclusive, and equitable for historically underrepresented communities? What are some action steps we can take on our campus?
Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you for having this meeting. This is Ron Ferguson, Ridgewater College. I want to first off start by saying I was hesitant to answer the question in the beginning about how I feel because in some sense, I don't know how I feel. I'm torn. Part of me is just angry and frustrated. Many of us in this room or in this Zoom room knows we've been having this, I'm gonna call it a battle, just like I don't like using the language of war, but it has felt like that sometimes with regard to there have really been folks that have lost in regard to the struggle that we all see ourselves in a racialized society where groups are marginalized. And, you know, for me, it's not an abstraction. It's every time I get pulled over in Minnesota is when my neighbors look at me in a certain way. I'm surrounded, I don't want to be political here, but I'm surrounded by flags that say certain things, whether it be Confederate or otherwise. And I can go in all kinds of examples, but I'm just saying, sometimes I feel unsafe in this time. So I don't know how I feel, because at the other end, I feel hope, right? I can't be lost in that feeling of fear and racial battle fatigue. And therefore, I hold on to the idea that things can change, that I do see there are folks that walk with me, that accompany me and others in the state, that groups like this even exist is an example that I can go to. I'm sitting here in my Zoom office. I don't talk to anybody. I don't see anyone. I see my family, but because of the world we live in, as Mary Sam aptly said, you know, various cultures and communities, I look for my people and I don't have them, quite frankly. I'm sitting here in my office and in my mind, turning on the news, the world's falling apart. So I wanted to say that because in some ways the hope is that in spite of this, I've seen things that have been able to improve and change, and there's evidence for that. And I wanted to talk about what it takes to move forward. I think one thing that I find in my frustration and fatigue is a need for allyship. And as Benita Love says, beyond someone who just says they're an ally, real co-conspirators. That we can have folks that are in our campuses that really are ready to have their fate intertwined with mine, as Lila Watson says, right? We've heard that before, that we know that we're all in this together, like really, not just in words. And when stuff gets rough, it's like, see ya, but rather that we're all in this together. I think starting that creates a language of equity on our campuses. I know many people may not have a sense of language when it comes to what is real equity, like looking at outcomes, and what is it mean to have true and authentic inclusion in our system, right? It's not just say we bring a bunch of people here, but can we retain them? Do they feel included? And so, you know, asking me if I can stay employed in the system and tenured, yeah, sure. But asking me, do you feel like you're one of us? Do you feel like you belong? That's a different question, right? And so recognizing there's a need to see that. I think when I'm on hiring committees or when I'm thinking about keeping folks of color in the system, we need to also resist the deficit mindset that we see, deficit mindset with our students. People say, well, they don't have this or they don't have that, but think of the assets that communities of color bring to our campus. I really try to talk to my colleagues about staying away from deficit mindset when it comes to looking at our colleagues and potential colleagues in the future. The assets, we need to court people. And I've been saying that meaning that we need to give reasons why people would want to come to our system, not just assume, well, everybody wants to be here. So that's just some of my thoughts. And like, I want to just end by saying, I remain hopeful. I know we can do this, but it's really going to take a concerted effort of folks that are willing to put it on the line. And it can't be only the communities of color and other marginalized groups taking up this stance. It's got to be the larger community. Thank you.
May I share something?
You may, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Dawn and I'm from DCTC, and I was just going to briefly share that over the past year, I've often shared moments of, sadness and anger and such with my sister-in-law. And she's been, her response has kind of been, yeah. And although I appreciate your awareness and your compassion, she's like, I know your heart, and I appreciate that you, as a white woman, still have no idea, even with all your awareness, what it's like living as a Black woman. And of course, I've, felt that really deep, and I know that. And so I just want to say to those on this call and out in our community who, obviously realize the impact of what's going on, and we're sad and we're angry and we have tears. Our sadness is not enough. We need to take a hard look at our complicity in all levels, even where sometimes that's hard because we don't know that we're being complicit by being silent or by, what we do. And so I would just challenge, all my white brothers and sisters to really take a hard look at their own life and their complicity, and to really take if you want to be an ally, right, put that into action. Create an alliance with the BIPOC communities and really put your action outward, but also inward.
And I would like to state, as somebody who works in student support, as an academic advisor, as some of these events and things were unfolding, it was happening in real time. One of the things that I always open with whenever I'm working with my students is I care about you. I want you to be successful. So it's checking in on your people, checking in on your folks, because not as a Black man, I was dealing with the world and everything else that's going on. And I brought all of that into what I was actually doing with the student as well. So know that as BIPOC individuals, especially in the polarizing times that we're in right now, we're all dealing with this and still coming to work. I can't just turn that side of consciousness off to say, all right, I'm going to worry about that later, or I'm going to put that on the back burner. That's all something that I bring in with me. And going back to what Ron was saying, a lot of times I'm here by myself. It's me and my family. I'm here in Zoom, in the world of Zoom as well. So events like this and places like this where we can kind of help share and uplift each other are just ways that it's showing that we care as a system, as a Minnesota State community. So by offering spaces like this and checking in on your people, your students, your colleagues, just showing them that, hey, how are you doing today? And just actively listening. You don't always have to solve everybody's problems, but you can listen and let them know that you actively care as well.
Yeah, I think one more thing too is we have to be willing to point out the contradictions. So for example, if there is an employee resource group on our campus, oftentimes supervisors are like, hey, wait a minute, where are you going? To this BIPOC affinity group, and now you're going to leave and go to the LGBT affinity group? That we need to make space for that, and we have to trust that our employees are doing what's good for our community. Because sometimes working in these spaces, you feel very isolated, and that gives you that opportunity to be surrounded by your people who look like you, or people who come from communities that you come from, and that's important for that connection to be built. And rarely do we, criticize an employee who's volunteering for the foundation for the golf outing, or for some of these other activities. And so I think it's just important as campus communities that we understand that we need to make space for BIPOC voices and their allies to make sure that they're being heard. And that not only being heard, but that what they are offering is actually being considered as a way forward for creating greater equity on our campus communities. Who better to know than the people who are living it, the experience. I mean, I think about the opportunity gaps within the MinnState system, and how long has the MinnState system been working to close these opportunity gaps. But rarely do they ever work directly with BIPOC communities to say, hey, what strategies, suggestions do you have? I don't know if the Racial Justice Network has been connected with. I don't know if Voices of Racial Justice have been connected with, the American Indian Movement, or any others have been connected with them saying from MinnState, how do we close this gap? What are the strategies that we should be using within our communities, within our system, for your communities to close these gaps? So it becomes frustrating that our voices become so filtered through jargon, right? Like I would imagine every campus community in the system has equity or inclusion as part of their mission or their values. But how are they actually living up to these principles and to these values? So that's that important piece of creating that space.
Just to follow up, Michael, I would say as well, conversely, it's not the sole emotional responsibility of those groups to do the work that you're hoping to see on your campuses. You need to work in collaboration, not in isolation.
Yeah, that's a good point, Michael and Nicholas. Thank you for sharing. When we think about this recent election, maybe there was a 55-45 split, maybe it was 51-49. Who knows? Some are still trying to contest it. But however, what we do know is true is that there's a divide. There's a sizable percentage on each side. And these dynamics are going to find themselves in our classrooms, within some of our student groups, within some of our community organizations. And then often in one of the comments that was shared, something to the effect in the chat about this notion of, what do I do? I don't identify as a BIPOC individual, and often this can make me feel helpless, ineffective, unprepared, ill-equipped to handle these conversations. But however, we are the professionals on our campus. And so when we go about the process of understanding the experience of our students and our colleagues, and understanding that we have a shared truth and a shared destiny that is intertwined, how do we go about embarking on this journey of uniting across our differences?
Hi, it's Tui again. One thing I can definitely think about is defining terms. Everybody like defining terms and getting on the same page. What does white supremacy mean? What does equity mean? What do these terms mean? Because it seems like where the problem is that we don't have a understanding of history. We don't have a foundational understanding of words. And I just think that's a place to start, is to educate and teach everyone, like, this is what this means when we refer to it. When we say that's racist, we're not saying you're a racist. We're saying that is racist. Just those type of things that tend to get lost in conversation because people are so focused on their shame and what they feel rather than what the conversation is about.
This is Deborah Lee at St. Cloud Technical and Community College. And just to respond also to what Jared, I think, was just saying in terms of what do we need to do, understanding that we're intertwined and we are all in this together. For me, one of the things that we have to do is keep reaching out. Even when it's hard to talk to anybody, that's a signal that we probably need to talk more. Even when we don't see eye to eye, when we disagree, that doesn't mean it's time to storm out the door and stop talking completely, but that we agree to take a little break and come back again and open that conversation again. Even when we're scared, we still have to reach out. I'm a firm believer that the most important part of our work is the relationships. And it's the relationship that we have with everyone. So that's what I think.
Monica, you have your hand up.
I was in a previous meeting yesterday, the day before, and we were having a discussion about one of the institutions who utilized their J term to offer courses regarding diversity and inclusion, short courses. My daughter at the Weissman, the U of M, the Weissman had offered the same thing. So just really short courses that faculty were willing to run that focus specifically on diversity and inclusion topics. So just I don't want to say low commitment, because that's not what I mean, as in easy, light thinking. Basically just adding kind of an extracurricular course for the mind, not the body, of how to get those definitions that Twee had mentioned and forwarding content to people.
You know, I think Elder Jerry and I used to teach a class together, and he would always have the students write 2 papers, you know, one on like a villain, and then some hero of theirs. Jerry, would you talk a little bit about why you had the students do that?
Sure. It's so easy to polarize and demonize someone. And when we do that, we can become more a victim to them because we don't understand what their needs are, either to help us understand or help us fight. So I just felt it was really important for students first to embody, to speak from the voice of people like Nelson Mandela and other sheroes and heroes, so that they're strengthened by that, but also for them to go into the mindset of Donald Trump or Joseph Stalin, to begin to have a sense that those were human beings who were sorting out reality. So we're not in denial, but we're in connection. That, you know, Joseph Stalin and Donald Trump are also my relatives. So I will fight them, but I will see them as human beings, and I will also acknowledge the Donald Trump in me. And it was interesting to see students do both so easily, to speak as a hero or shero, and also to begin to get sort of an inside empathy with some of these folks who have done or do terrible things. So that's why I did it.
Lena.
Some of what I'm going to say, I know some have already stated some of this, but yes, these events make me sad, but I'm more angry now, and I'm more disgusted at the events, I think, than maybe 5-10 years ago I would have been. That's not me. That's not my family. I don't have to really deal with that. But seeing how I've evolved and acknowledging my white privilege has helped me grow to help be a better ally for those individuals who suffer this type of treatment on a daily basis. I think when you ask Jonathan what we can do is listen. Number one is listen. And that, yes, you're not always looking for a response or a way to solve it. You're just looking for a friend and an ear. But also speaking up and taking action when you're seeing something that's not right or isn't right. Say something. Don't just sit by just because it's not impacting you. Be a better role model for your children and your children's children. Participating in these types of events, I think it's important to be educated. and continuing that education. And as a current Minnesota State employee in a leadership role, restating my commitment to make sure this work is a priority on our campuses. I've been blessed with having Michael Burchard on our campuses and really value our team work. And I could see where if you have a leadership, that isn't supporting you in those initiatives, it could be problematic. But opening up those doors and those windows for those conversations to occur, as difficult as some of them might be.
I'm not sure if this is my turn to go, but I'll go because I see the clock is counting down. For those people who do not know me, my name is Venerine Brownbolt Swain. I joined the group a little late, so I may have missed some of what was said. But some of the things that was floating up to the top is that we need to acknowledge our complicity, those who are white. And if we're going to be ally, we need to make sure that we're working both inside ourselves and outside. And the other thing that I heard is that these activities are happening in real time, that we need to remember that as BIPOC staff and faculty, that we're experiencing this experience at the same time that we're assisting students. So we need to make sure that we are allowing the individuals to have some time. We need to make sure that they have the space to talk and not be criticized for being with that group. We also need to look at the values to our equity missions that we have. We need to make sure that we're walking what we're talking. We need to know the issues show up also in the classroom. So it's not just an issue that is outside. It's going to be showing up in all places within the community. We need to make sure that we're uniting across our differences. And then for us to have the conversation, we need to make sure that we're defining terms so that when we speak, we're talking the same talk. There are courses that are held outside of the classroom, and we need to encourage people to attend them. And then we need to have empathy, and we need to listen. So those are some of the things I got from this discussion. And my take on all of this is that each of us still need to be our best self. By this, I mean that we need to resist being complacent and make a commitment to work on changes within our environment. These things, as though it's challenging, and I always say to myself, why is it that I am always the one that have to change? But we have to push ahead. We cannot just take this and say, this is, be angry, so therefore I'm okay. So in doing so, I want to make sure that I emphasize that change is slow. Nothing is going to happen. We know that this has been going on for a long time, and we know that individuals are out there trying to make the change. But despite the fact that it doesn't look like that, we have come a long way. And we just can't give up. And we'll take each and every one of us to do the work. Remember that we all live in different communities. Everyone experiences different experiences. Everyone has different values. And individuals have different morals. And that all in all, we're all different, but we all need to make sure that we are pushing individuals to begin to make some changes. And one of the things that I just wrote this thing down because I saw it in something I was reading not long ago, that great leaders don't set out to be great leaders. They do the work, and it's by doing the work that they become great leaders. So let's all reach out and be that leader, as hard as it is in the difficult times that we're in. This is our work as equity champions. So I encourage each of you, don't be dismayed. go out and be a leader by doing the work and by helping others to begin to make those changes.
Thank you. Jeremy, you want to go ahead and close us out?
Yes, I do see a few hands up, but we are running short on time. I want to thank you all for joining us today in this conversation. I appreciate you all taking time out of your day to come in and talk with us about feelings that we've been having and ways that hopefully we can progress and continue to make change. As part of the Indigenous Men and Men of Color work group, we do put on 2 programming events every year. And the next one coming up, we have our Student Leadership Conference. So picking right up off of the last statements that were made before, we will be having a Student Leadership Conference that's geared towards high school and college students. And this year's event is the 2021 BIPOC Student Leadership Conference, Hear Me, Advocating for Voices in Higher Education. And I will share the save the date with you all. This is open to any high school student, grades 10, sophomore year and up, and any college level student. So this is a way where students can come, learn, and find their voices in higher education, hopefully. So I leave you with that. If this is something that you would be interested in, or anyone on your campus or throughout the Minnesota State community, I encourage you all to please come and share this with us. So give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can get the actual flyer in the.
Twee put a link in.
Okay. So the actual link is in there. Again, thank you all for the work that you all do on your prospective campuses. It's going to take all of us to continue to fight and